Good evening. I'd like to reopen the open session, restart the open session for the January 26, 2016 Board of Selectmen's meeting. I would remind anyone that this meeting is being televised and recorded, and if there's anyone in the audience recording or videotaping, I would ask them to acknowledge so at this time. Thank you, Mr. Roush from the Enterprise. We had an executive session this evening, and I would like, before we get started, to make an announcement that during this executive session, we discussed litigation, specifically the possibility of upcoming litigation with Future Generation Wind. The board voted unanimously to designate Associate Town Counsel Charles Sabat to join the legal team in conjunction with the in-house staff and the Board of Health. And there'll be a lawsuit that will be filed shortly within Superior Court against Future Generation Wind. Understanding that litigation is now pending, I would like to request the public limit themselves to open comments relative to the foregoing project. We are working a delicate balance of understanding what the litigation might be, and also like to not show our hand, if you understand what I'm saying. So, having said that, I would like to go ahead now and take a moment of silence for our troops and our public safety personnel. Thank you all.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a public comment, Mr. Moley, this evening?
There is indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gilbede, is it Gilbedes?
Gibbities.
Gibbedes, I'm sorry, Karen. Keeping in mind what I've just announced, I'd ask you to,
And I will.
thank you very much. Good evening and welcome,
Thank you.
Karen.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'll show you the picture that I was asked to share from across the bay from our house. And I guess I will spare you my prepared statement, but I will ask you, is there somebody that is a contact person that we might be able to talk to have questions answered regarding progress around the issue of the turbines?
I can tell you that as the board learns of information that is available publicly, we would make announcements like that for you. I would guess that if you had general questions, the first person to contact would be the town administrator. And then if there is any information available, we can relay that across. If not, we'll also let you know that as well.
Okay.
I can understand entirely that request.
And regarding the orders that were issued a couple of weeks ago by the Board of Health, is there any information about those, or?
Those have never been filed, so that may become something that takes place at a later date, but at this time I'm not at liberty to speak to that.
Okay. Then I'll step away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Troy, at this time?
Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, we will provide, as the litigation enters into a public forum, which includes the filing of the complaint in Barnstable Superior Court, with some updates as the court docket will reflect. We have a specific plan, we have a specific mission. We intend to carry out that mission. We have studied the record very carefully, and we've studied what we believe needs to be done by the town to take effective action with respect to enforcement of our bylaw, and we are confident that we have identified in a strategic sense the most important elements of our bylaw that need to be observed in order to build the type of record that we need to have with respect to enforcement action on this issue. Mr. Sabat has joined us. He is an excellent litigator, and he's going to bring his experience to the table and assist us in this case. But finally, I want to note this, as much as we would like to share the intricacies of the litigation with the public at this time, just as we have discussed in executive session, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the people who are the most interested to learn about what we talked about in executive session are the people who are going to be the defendants in the action. And for strategic reasons, we are going to have to limit our discussion to executive sessions with the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen, and we will be heard in court.
Thank you, Mr. Tryon. Okay. Next item on the agenda this evening is correspondence. I wonder if you might take us through that, Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course. We have a letter here from Attorney Jeffrey Ford, and this is a posting with regard to NRG Canal 3 Development LLC, a facility siting board notice. We do have a notice required to be read. It is one page in length, somewhat lengthy, so I'll apologize up front. And here we go. Notice of public comment or hearing. NRG Canal 3 Development LLC, known as NRG or the company, has filed a petition to construct with the Energy Facilities Siting Board, or Siting Board, requesting approval to construct a new electric power plant at 9 Freezer Road in the town of Sandwich, capable of generating 350 megawatts of electricity, the proposed generating facility. The company has also filed a petition seeking individual zoning exemptions and a comprehensive zoning exemption for the proposed generating facility, or zoning petition. The hearings on the petition to construct and the zoning petition have been consolidated. The attached legal notice describes the proposed generating facility and its proposed location in more detail and explains the opportunities for public participation in the review process. Please read the attached legal notice carefully. The Siting Board is a state agency that will determine whether the proposed generating facility can be constructed and whether the zoning petition will be approved. There will be an opportunity for the public to comment at a Siting Board public comment hearing on Wednesday, February the 10th, 2016, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Sandwich Public High School Auditorium, located at 365 Quaker Meeting House Road in East Sandwich, Mass. 02537. At the public comment hearing, the company will provide information on the proposed generating facility, and the Siting Board will present information on its review process and receive comments and questions from members of the community. The public comment hearing is an important opportunity for the community to learn about the proposed generating facility and the Siting Board review process, and for the Siting Board to hear questions and concerns from the community. All comments are important to the Siting Board. Anyone with an interest in the project is encouraged to attend. Individuals and groups affected by the company's petitions who wish to be involved in the Siting Board review process may request to participate as either interveners or limited participants. Such requests must meet the criteria outlined in the attached legal notice. That is all located within our packet. The deadline to make such a request is 5 p.m. on Monday, February 29th, 2016. The process for making a request to participate is explained in the legal notice. Questions concerning participation also will be answered at the public comment hearing. Copies of the company's petitions are available for public inspection at the locations listed on the enclosed notice. If you have any questions about the Siting Board's review process, please feel free to call the presiding officer, Robert J. Shea, at robert.j.shea@state.ma.us, or telephone 617-305-3514. The Siting Board's address is Energy Facilities Siting Board, 1 South Station, Boston, Mass. 02110. That is the conclusion of that particular notice, and there are several attached documents pertaining to that, should the public want to review those.
And there would be, just as a note, those would be available in the town clerk's office.
Jim, can you say where those copies are available?
the copies of this particular notice? Within the town clerk's
Town
office?
clerks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Secondly, we have a notice from Xfinity, and it's with regard to a change of address notification. They have listed a new address. They could be reached at their Government Affairs Office at 181 Ballardvale Street, Suite 203 in Wilmington, Massachusetts, 01887, and then copy to two other addresses in Manchester, New Hampshire, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and a contact number if anyone should have questions. We also have from the Upper Cape Cod Regional Technical School District Committee, there's the minutes of their December 10th, 2015 meeting for our review. Next, we have a notice from Eversource that they will begin pruning along power lines during the next 4 weeks. I would note that the location of the exact pruning is not noted on the notice. And then lastly, a note from Chairman Bob Gray of the Conservation Commission, and it's with regard to the resignation of Martha Craig Reinhardt, who has decided to leave the Conservation Commission. So there will be an opening there. And that concludes all of the correspondence.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by the members of the board relative to the correspondence?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to.
Please, Mr. Mara.
I want to say thank you to Martha Reinhardt for all she's done for the Conservation Commission, and I don't know if there's a thank you letter on that packet
There is
tonight.
not, but there will be at your next meeting.
But,
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Anything else, gentlemen? I wonder if we might have Allison Beiser-Knox. Please, Allison, welcome. How are you this evening?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, thank you for
Thank you for
coming in.
having us join you. I just wanted to give you a very brief update on the progress of Hoxie Center. I have two guests I'd like to speak. First is our development consultant, Jackie Lane. She'll speak for a couple of minutes, and then I'll speak, and then Scott, and then we'll be done. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having us here this evening.
Welcome, Jackie.
I am a consultant by vocation and a volunteer, community volunteer by avocation, and this project kind of combines the two things. My kids went to Hoxie School, and I live in South Sagamore, so this was kind of a fun thing for me to do. I've been with the group about a year, and we've spent that year trying to basically get organized and get ready to go public and to raise funds. And we have produced a brochure, which I think Allison has copies for you. And then we have a second brochure, which is, this is more about what the Hoxie Center is about, but this brochure is really the building fund, the capital campaign brochure. And we've used the words restoration, renovation, and renewal. And we have split the campaign up and so on. We also have been it was snowed out, but we're having a board training session. Again, getting everything in order, getting everyone up to snuff, in order to have the credibility to go to different grant-producing organizations. I am pleased to announce that I have one person who has been a major funder on the Cape, has nibbled at Hoxie. I had to get him over the bridge. And he did give a small donation at the end of the year, and he's very interested in funding all the landscaping type work. And he's a person that gave over $1 million to the Cape Museum of Art, $450,000 to Thornton Burgess, and has done $1 million to the Y campaign. So there's money there. That's very encouraging. And I've been in contact with the Pappas Foundation, who loves to do funding for programming, and I'm keeping them informed as Allison grows the programming. So again, there's a lot of work to get ready to really go public and to have credibility. There's a lot of competition out there, but we're putting all the pieces in place, and we're getting ready to raise money on our own, because it's going to take a lot of it.
Thank you very much. Questions, gentlemen?
Yeah, any questions?
Thank you very much, Jackie.
I do have a few brochures. I have lots more available. All right, just quickly, little update on our outreach programs. We've just this month started our second year doing outreach, what we call STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math, at both Peebles and Bournedale Elementary Schools, thanks to a really generous grant award from both the Door Foundation and the Anderegg Family Foundation. Basically, that means myself and some Hoxie educators go in and we see every kindergartner through fourth grade student who are at the public schools in Bourne once a month to deliver hands-on innovative programs. We've had a really positive response from all the teachers, the principals, and even the parents. We recently started an after-school science club at both Peebles and Bournedale and had an overwhelming response after 24 hours of putting out the notice that we were going to offer this. We had over 225 kids respond. So we have had to add a second day and hire another person to help with that. And it's also led us to create and develop a service learning program where we're going to be working with some high school students from Bourne High School, and then also at least one from Upper Cape Tech and a couple students from Sturgis to help with those programs. And what else? We are working with the library to offer a couple of other programs. There's an art and a music program, very well received. We started last week. We've contracted out to an art educator and a music educator, both local people, had great response there. We're working on pulling together summer programs to offer to children of all ages. Let's see, we are also working with Quincy College in Plymouth to become a site in the future once we get open, not only to provide GED testing, which is now called high-set testing, but also credit and non-credit courses and certificate programs through Quincy College in Plymouth that they would be housed at Hoxie. Many other initiatives. Every day I meet someone else who wants to get involved or share their experience. Gathering a list of artists and musicians and educators for future programming to offer at the center once we are open. And I think that kind of covers everything right now in a nutshell. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Fortunately, Allison and I both talk pretty fast, so it shouldn't take too much time.
Good evening, Scott. Welcome.
Good evening. Nice to be here. Thank you. We're just thrilled to be working with Jackie Lane. Allison is just a tireless worker. She's been an incredible executive director. She knows people in the community, and she's out building relationships in the schools, which is everything we could ask for. We have had some great successes. We've had the deed just over 6 months in a 6-month period. Total to date, we've raised over $700,000, including the CPC funds. That's dollars and resources. We have folks such as an anonymous roofing company, which came in and saved us over $20,000 in roofing repairs at no charge. We had the great fortune of finding a flooring provider who has antique yellow pine hardwood, which is we're told the flooring that would have been installed in Hoxie between, I think, 1898 and like 1921. It's because of the travel routes and the lumber, that's what would have been there at the time if they could have afforded it. So we're bringing that authentic product in to do the whole main level. In addition, we have a $41,000 sponsorship towards that, and we're looking for our CPC request coming up, which will be this May, to include the last push to get the building open, fully open, including our elevator, our ADA modifications. We're currently working with a company to do the ADA bathrooms in the auditorium, which is exciting. So far we've almost completely installed sprinkler system, fire alarm system, done asbestos abatement, a regular alarm system. We have the Sheriff's Department doing painting in the building for us. We have design and engineering services that have happened. We found folks who can restore the windows for us. A lot of really positive things for a brief amount of time. Some of you know that we weren't able to go after the larger grants until we had secured the deed, and that had to be a careful and deliberate process in positive partnership with the town, which it was. And getting that deed, we're then able to go for the larger grants. So most of those deadlines are in the spring. We did submit a $250,000 matching grant to the Mass Cultural Council Facilities Fund, which is a tourism grant. It's really about Bourne being a destination, about Hoxie at Sagamore Beach being a place people are going to go to see a lot. In addition, we have had support letters from some of our representatives in the community to support that, to go to Mass Cultural Council, which has been great. And last week we had a great walkthrough for our Community Preservation Committee, as well as some of you were able to make it, to really show, I think, the broader community how successful we've been as a local town, being able to say we celebrate art, science, education, and culture. We also realize that these values dovetail well with an omni-generational approach to bring people together, to decrease addiction, depression, suicide, by having a positive approach. So we're really glad to be part of that. And the last thing I would say is we have a Mass Historic grant coming up, which we're going to be able to use to leverage and match the community preservation funds for that grant. It's put us in an excellent position for that funding. And we also have some additional grants, but I think I'm going to close at that. Any questions?
Yes,
You did talk fast.
No. Really?
Mr. Meyer?
yes. Based on your CPA appropriations from previous years,
Yeah.
how much of that how much of those dollars have you spent, and what's left for a balance?
That's great. I couldn't have given you a better question to ask. I'm glad you asked that. We are right now about 3/4 of the way through both of those grants. We have completed the first grant billing process, and we're about halfway through the second grant, and we've now had the grant agreement issued on the second grant, so those funds should be coming fairly quickly. And we have incredibly positive relationships with our contractors. We've been able to advance the funds largely ourselves due to our fundraising. And then we've had a very positive relationship. The town's been pretty good about turnaround. That first grant was really fast on the reimbursement, and we're grateful for that. And now we're waiting for the second grant, which we anticipate will be reimbursed shortly. So,
Probably more of a statement, more of anything else, Mr. Chairman, but thank you for stepping up over the last few years and preserving a jewel of the town. You know, that I've always been one of your biggest supporters. I'm at every event I can be at, and you've put me to work, so.
you always are. We really appreciate that,
So,
which is great.
thank you.
And definitely, I should say that we do have a committee and team of volunteers that is well over 40 people, and whether it's events or fundraisers or just helping out. So thank you to all of our committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott, very much. Any questions, gentlemen? Comments?
I'd just say as a comment, I thought it was really fantastic to have that opportunity to be invited to the open house and come on over there. Several members of this board and other members from the community and other leadership were there in attendance. And it was really fantastic to get that walking tour, a little historical tour, showing us exactly the painstaking efforts you were taking on to restore the windows, have them either restored or fabricated in such a way that the character could still be preserved and kept, and yet energy efficient, so that they could be run at a minimum. So just thank you very much for the opportunity to show us through and see the progress. That was exciting.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Mr. Ellis?
It was very nostalgic for me to go through. I spent the 8th grade there. I was in the first group that ever got bused. And there was no controversy about that. Once you went to the cafeteria and you ate the cookies and the meals that they were served, you wished that you had been going there all 8 years. I give you a hip hip hooray. You're doing an outstanding job. And as a past chairman of the Historic Commission, I couldn't give you a greater best job, good job. Keep it up.
Okay. Thank you all. Licenses and appointments, Capital Outlay Committee, Carol Lynch. Is Carol here this evening?
We don't have it on our packet, so he's got to.
You gotta read the date, whatever it's by.
Must send it over.
June 30th, 2016.
Okay.
Would you like to address the board, Carol? Not required if you're not. Carol's coming before the board to be appointed to the Capital Outlay Committee. Good evening, and thank you for coming forward.
Thank you for having me. I can just introduce myself. My husband
Please,
and I.
that'd be great.
My husband and I moved out to Massachusetts from Iowa in 1975, and we bought our first house in Pocasset in 1976, and then our second we moved from there to another house in Pocasset in 1984. So we've been here a long, long, long time. Our kids both went through the Bourne school system. I've worked in the past on reestablishing the PTA. We had to start with the Partners in Education first, and then go to the PTA, and I've worked through that for years. The first override, and I've been around long enough to know that Bourne is a very challenged community, not one of the wealthiest, but they have a lot of heart. So I'm retired now, so I have time, and I decided I'd kind of like to do some more community service.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Carol from any members? Do I hear a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
For the term,
June 30th.
Valid and expiring on June 30th, 2016.
okay. Motion's been made and seconded, made by Mr. Blanton, and seconded by Mr. Meyer.
All the way around.
Oh, sorry. Made by Mr. Meyer, seconded by Mr. Blanton.
Right.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much again, Carol. Under Selectmen's business, picking up where we left off, I wonder if, Corinne, you want to come up and tell us a little bit about the planning board meeting, articles that are coming before the town at a special town meeting to be held on February 8th.
You want to sit up here?
You want-
Okay.
Taking a position.
Good evening and welcome, Corinne.
Good evening. Corinne Moore, the town planner. Tonight, we have 3 articles for the special town meeting. Hopefully, they're simple and not too complicated and don't take too much time. Let me just find my paper here. The first one is Article 5, which is a zoning map change. The proposal is to change a B2 district to a B3 district. This district is located at the Bourne Rotary, up on the canal side site, the former canal side site. Behind currently, this portion here is B2. Behind that is B3. The proposal is to take this front portion here and to change that into a B3 so that it was continuous through that. The B3 change, what that will do, it will remove a single-family component. No longer will single families be allowed in that district. It will reserve the area for business development without single-family development. Residential will be allowed through an open space community with 10 acres or above. It also will allow for an increase in building height by a special permit.
What is through the chair?
Mr. Meyer?
What happened to the comprehensive permit that's been, well, not comprehensive permit, the 40B that was filed a few years back? I mean, will this change that protection, or is that application considered dormant at this point?
I don't think it's expired quite yet because there were legal ramifications were kind of extended that. But I don't think there's much time left on it.
Okay.
Other question? Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, Corinne, thank you for bringing this forward and working it out. I was chairman, I think, of the planning board when this originally went in and it got separated. And the object was because we had Metropolitan Life was very interested. So I give you a pat on the back for bringing this forward because I think it's a positive step in the business expansion in the town of Bourne, and thank you.
So I think it will widen the opportunity of anybody that's looking up there to be able to do some commercial development.
Mr. Picard?
Just one question on all 3. Ms. Moore, Has the planning board taken a position on these as of yet?
On Thursday.
Okay, so should our vote be pending planning board, or?
I would
The
think
board's
that
gonna make the recommendation, but we're just saying if we support the article or not. They're the ones that will be reporting it at town meeting, when they read their report. So, and the finance committee will be giving their recommendation as well.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion that we support Article number 5 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion that's been made by Mr. Meyer and seconded by Mr. Ellis to offer us an indication of support by the Board of Selectmen for Article 5. Would I do it again?
No, no, you're fine, Mr.
Good, thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
If I could jump to Article 7.
Certainly.
That is dependent on Article 5, and that is a change in Section 2500 by adding the subscript by, no, this is where we add the B3 to that note. So we include the height increase in that particular section. We now allow it in B1, we will also allow it in B3. So it's just adding B3 to that section.
And that would be by a special permit.
Correct.
Okay. Question? Mr.
Just
Bruno?
for clarity, that is the only area in town, Zone B3, is that correct?
Correct. We have no other B3s in town.
Interesting. Thank you. Mr. Blanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Corinne, what would be the maximum buildable height under that, if that were to go forward?
It's by special permit. They would have to make an argument to the planning board for the height that they were seeking.
So there would be no particular cap, it would just be based upon the particular
Correct.
proposal? Thank you.
But isn't there a minimum, like 35 feet, anything over that's a special permit?
By right.
Yeah, by
It's
right.
yeah.
35 feet, right?
Okay.
Other
Well,
questions?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve Article number 7.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion that's been made by Mr. Meyer and seconded by Mr. Bland to recommend the approval of Article 7. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, is there any comments from anybody in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to recommend approval by the Board of Selectmen, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Now back to Article 6. It is a downtown sign regulations, Section 2885, C1. It is to change the height requirement for the sign from 6 feet to 8 feet, and to allow the Design Review Committee to increase to 12 feet, depending on the individual site conditions. We have found in the downtown that 6 is very restrictive. We'd like to raise that and give the opportunity to some of the outlying businesses to go higher.
Questions, gentlemen?
Motion to approve Article number 6.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Meyer and seconded by Mr. Blanton to recommend approval of Article 6 for the special town meeting. Any discussion or any questions from anyone in the audience? Seeing none. Any comments by any member of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Corinne, would you let the development team folks tomorrow know 10:30 and not 10 o'clock, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we have completed the review of all of the articles. I did want to make sure that if there was any questions or comments we'd have by any member of the board relative to the remaining articles in the special town meeting, but I believe that we've covered all 11 articles. Okay, any other questions or comments about anything relative to the special town meeting? If not, there is a pre-meeting on, let me just give that to remind everyone.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Last week, when I gave my statement on amending Article number 11 to put money back in the community building for the purposes of opening the building, it's come to my attention that some people over at the library have taken offense to my comment, saying that, they are going to be affected by the fact that they're out, the money being cut down, that they're going to be affected by it. And the library does service every and all generations, from newborn all the way up to the elderly. That was not the intent. The intent is the library already has money going back in their budget at this town meeting, where the community building didn't have any money. So what I was trying to do is to help is trying to, make sure the money was spread out evenly, as opposed to taking offense to something, and that's wrong. And if trustees have a problem with my comments, I have an email address and they can reach out to me, which they have. And I'm gonna ask that I be put on their next agenda, since Mr. Gately's in the audience as a trustee. Please send that message to your chairman that I'd like to be put on the agenda so they can speak to me directly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else relative to the special town meeting? That pre-meeting is on February 4th at 3 o'clock. That's to go through all the protocols and motions and so forth. Okay. Selectmen's goals. We've been waiting a long time for this. Mr. Blanton and Mr. Meyer, I'll turn it over to one of you or both.
Michael will go.
All right.
Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll probably have a lively run through the goals we put off for quite some time. Selectman Meyer and myself sat down with Town Administrator Mr. Guarino over here, and we had gone over goals that we as a board had discussed in general, and we dove into those a little bit deeper with the Town Administrator. We looked at just a scope review where we were with goals. There were some tasks of the selectmen, some issue areas we looked at that we would be looking to enhance this coming year. Those were 1, leadership, 2, fiscal responsibility, and 3, policy establishment. Those were our broad and realistic policy establishment was the watchword that we all used in our session. We talked a little bit about the accomplishments from the previous year that we might like to replicate moving forward. We referenced specifically the formation of the financial planning working group. And that was, just to remind folks, that was the combination with liaisons from this Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the School Committee. We had talked about restructuring that, potentially moving forward, maybe adding liaisons from other departments from around town. But we did note that as a accomplishment from the previous year we'd like to see continue moving forward into the next year. We also looked at effectiveness and how we could hold better meetings in terms of tightening our agendas, making sure we maintain a mutual respect for all the other board members, elimination of redundancy, and arriving at consensus if at all possible. So some carryover goals we looked at were, of course, we have talked for over a year on the plastic bag reduction.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about trying to continue some commitment to that effort. We've also talked about carrying over our commitment to the work on the 208 plan with regard to water, wastewater. From a financial lens, we've also looked at making sure we work to continue the continuity of services while continuing good financial stewardship to the citizenry that we serve. So in that regard, we also looked at goals, fiscal goals, and that would be refining policies. We addressed a few different financial policies from the previous year. We'd like to continue to refine financial policies that would make us more effective. Monitoring staffing policies, looking at the staffing policies in town hall and the various departments around town. We looked at areas that touched on environmental protection, economic development and community development, and organizational management as prime goals. So under organizational management, we talked a little bit about the creating efficiencies, restructuring for better efficiency and communication amongst departments, and look at organizational needs for both current and future uses under the organization. Economic development, we talked an awful lot about, as a board, the continued look at wastewater treatment, monies related to that. We looked at how we would continue to handle gray water, how we would look at septic capacity as it affects economic development, as we know from some of the projects that came forward over the last month or so, that we are reaching that threshold of wastewater capacity, and so we need to expand that capacity if we're going to extend more economic development opportunities for businesses to come to the downtown area. So that's related to the outflow issues. We talked about sitting down with town planner and talking about creating a publicly viewable catalog of developable land, so that way developers coming on into town could take a look and very easily put their eyes on, first publicly, maybe on the town website, and then later on discussions with the town planner and economic development engines in town, looking at developable land, what we could do with those, how we could access those. We talked about enforcement of our existing blight bylaw and studies to prospect for new development. Under the 208 program, the Cape Cod Commission does offer technical assistance, so they've had the reset team who's come to Bourne on a number of occasions. We would continue to work with them and the work that's ongoing with Bob Siolik. And those were the broad goals that we scoped on out, diving on into a couple of details. With regard to organizational efficiencies, we're going to continue to work towards trying to refine policies and practices, continue discussion in that area. An organizational chart was put forward by the town administrator, and
There were two organizational charts put forward in your budget. There was the existing, although with some pieces needing to be amended, and then a proposed organizational chart that I hoped by them, the board seeing that, would spark a discussion, so we can get that off of the future agenda items and into the discussion by the board. So if you look in your, I'm sure you have, in your budget message, you will see the main organizational chart, and then there is a proposed organizational chart behind that page.
don't have that with us at.
No, I know, but Mr. Picard, that's his with-
Okay, so is this the existing?
that's basically the existing.
That's the existing,
And this one behind.
and this one behind, okay. Well, go ahead, I'm just,
We don't want to get
I'm just
Mr.
seeing if
Picard
I'm
started with the
I'm
reorganizational
just
chart
gonna
at
see
this
if I
time.
can.
Probably be a subject for much future discussion.
It's for later discussion, I just
Yeah.
put it in there for the purposes of thought.
Under other efficiencies, apologize for that, we talked about centralizing some bulk purchases between departments, cross-town, maybe economies of scale could be brought to bear if we could find ways to bulk purchase. We can't always, we discussed the possibility of trying to bulk purchase with the school, but I know we talked about the separate needs of both
Well,
departments.
but there are some common things, and the superintendent has spoken with me on numerous occasions on looking at how to do that. So they have a very good cooperative, if you will, through, up in Quincy, and so it's something we can look at.
We also talked about the possibility of maybe centralizing mailing townwide to all be brought down to town hall and have a lot of the close departments centralize their mailing and try to capitalize on postage savings. I believe that was Selectman Meyer's suggestion, to try to recognize some cost savings on postage. Did you want to speak to that, Peter?
We're actually working on that.
Yeah, but they're doing it operationally, so it's already in the works. And as far as the plastic bag bylaw, there's now some resident participation that has now come forward and may consider an alternative way of getting a bylaw changed. And I think that it's been on last year's goals, this year's goals, and I think that's something that we should be working on for the Springtown meeting.
Yeah, the recycling committee is looking at that, so.
We need to give it a little more urgency.
We also had a little bit of a discussion with regard to police and fire vehicles and whether or not there could be cost savings on leasing as opposed to buying. So the town administrator is looking into potential cost savings if we were to shift the way we do vehicle ownership. And also, I think you're having that conversation with Jonathan, who just left the
As
room.
well as my colleague in Dartmouth, who, they do some lease arrangements, but in their lease arrangements, they don't have the DPW doesn't do all the mechanical work like ours does. We have a very exceptional DPW as it relates to that type of thing, so.
Also, Mr. Chairman, as part of that report, we talked about economic development, and I wonder, and I think we even talked about having a separate meeting to go over that particular initiative, separate from our weekly meeting, like a workshop meeting, to see what will be the process going forward from getting from creating a department or an economic development area, as opposed to putting money where your mouth is to start getting it, to get it up and running. I mean, with the override going down, we need to start bringing more development into this town, and the jizz, through Main Street is starting to do that. But I think we need to start looking as a way of what will the economic development officer or department would do, where's the money going to come from, and we need, as a board, decide what direction we're going to do with it, go with it. So I guess wondering if at the town meeting, and we can look at a future meeting dates, we can talk about that very issue.
If I may.
Is that a request for a?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's an excellent segue into that final discussion with regard to economic development, and hit on some of the subjects we touched on with regard to wastewater treatment and expansion. The wastewater advisory group is pulling yeoman's work on that effort. They're looking at the wastewater treatment project slated for Queen Sewell Park, as well as other potential partnerships regionally. That'll hopefully spur on some development downtown. We talked about the review of current inventory of developable land, and Corinne and I had an initial discussion about the viability of whether or not GIS interns may at some point be able to be used, whether or not some cost savings could be utilized there. And that exhausts most of the notes I had from our initial goals discussions. But if Peter or Tom have anything else to add to that.
That's a meeting that we're talking about.
Any other comments from either members or members of the board?
Maybe that Tom can get together with the chairman as we start the economic development forum at a future meeting to see who we can bring in as an outside resource to help us. We don't have much in technical assistance money or consultancy, but if he can bring someone in to help us drive that issue, I think would be great.
How much? We don't have any.
Now, the truth of the matter, Mr. Chairman, if I could for a second, Corinne, I'm going to ask for some assistance in that, but I'm also going to dust off an old Growing Your Business seminar that I ran many years ago, and try to get some of the same players involved with that, which would be the chamber and the state and some of the folks locally, but we'll talk more about that as we move it forward.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, gentlemen?
But I wonder if part of that initiative is we need to be looking at budgets, like Michael and I have the town planner's budget for this review cycle. And I wonder if maybe Corinne should be in the room when we're discussing this to see if it's just gonna fall into her department. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, I think she needs to be a player at the table for input.
Absolutely. I think if you look at either of those organizational charts, it would fall under the Office of Planning and Development, so. And I've seen Corinne's proposed organizational chart too, so
Yes.
it's quite impressive.
I want to see hers.
I think our
I've
organizational.
seen yours. I want to see hers now.
I think Corinne's organizational chart has most of the spokes coming right back to her.
Yeah.
She's been pulling yeoman's work on
Yeah, well,
so
they do
much.
right now. I mean, without belaboring the point, all of the economic development work, all of the grant work, all of the Main Street work, all of the housing work really has come to the office of the town planner, who has been acting in a most professional manner as our community and economic development officer. And the growth incentive zone and all of the things that go with it, the Main Street upgrades, so we have had great service, but it's asking one person to do an awful lot. So,
Okay. Anything else? Thank you both. Are you going to provide some written notes?
I will.
Oh, thank you. All right, I'd like to move on to number 9. This is the Town Administrator's report relative to the impact of fiscal 17 and labor negotiations.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you are aware, and as I have stated at several meetings, we have 8 bargaining units that we need to negotiate with hopefully prior to the end of the fiscal year, and hopefully have many of them concluded by town meeting. I would ask that the selectmen, there's a lot of things that we need to discuss. I need some parameters on a number of different areas, so that we're following, whatever we do is following the will of the board on this, as the charter provides that I negotiate all contracts on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
I'm glad you just said that, because I highlighted that.
Well, see, we're all on the same page.
We're talking bargaining units, or are we talking individual employment
Bargaining
contracts?
Bargaining units.
But still, with regard to that, shouldn't we have this discussion after town meeting in a an executive session?
Well, my
Mr.
thought,
Chairman?
right, if
Yeah.
I was going to suggest 2 things if I could.
Yep.
If the town meeting concludes in one evening, I would suggest that we post a meeting prior to be sure we're with the open meeting law, to meet on February 9, where we currently have no meeting scheduled. If the town meeting were to extend into the next evening, we could cancel the meeting and continue on with town meeting, but we would have a date to do that, because we will have an executive session on the 16th to discuss other issues as well. And then on February 2nd, we have issues related to other health-related contracts and those types of things. So that will be an executive session, and that will probably take up the entirety of the hour and a half that we have. So I'm thinking that we could post something for the 9th. If town meeting doesn't run into a second night, we can meet. If it does, we can cancel and schedule for another evening.
Would that be acceptable? We'll do it at 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
That would be fine, whatever the pleasure of the
What's the
board is
pleasure of
on
the
that.
board? Want to do it earlier?
If the members of the board can get here, and we don't have another meeting, right?
Correct.
But we could meet at 6 then.
I'd prefer to keep it at 7 if that's at all possible.
Anyone else?
And take a vote.
7 works good better for me.
I'm just trying to figure out a time. 7 it is then? February 9th? Okay. You post that?
I will post it,
Okay.
yes.
All right, very good. Anything else, Tom, relative? I would like to ask, I know that the chairman of the finance committee is here. We've made a great deal of progress, and I know an awful lot of effort's been put in by the members of the Board of Selectmen relative to reviewing the entire budget in preparation to supplying it to the board, or the finance committee, by the requirements of the charter on the 1st or 2nd of February. I would like to ask if you might address and ask your board if we could push that off to February 17th, which is a Wednesday. That would give us an additional 2 weeks to undertake final reviews before making a final recommendation. You don't have to address this now, you can, although I'd appreciate it if you did.
The Finance Committee's schedule would be future schedule would be somewhat developed, dependent on the vote taken at the special town meeting, whether we can go back to meeting on Monday nights or meeting on Wednesdays. I would say if there are any materials that the Finance Committee could get ahead, in other words, if there are some long-term projections or debt schedules or other materials that we could get in advance, I think that would be very helpful. It is likely that we will not meet to start reviewing the budgets until the 17th of February at the earliest.
Okay. Well, what we might do,
So,
what we might do, if I could, MJ, is a lot of the departments, particularly within Town Hall, are pretty much unchanged. We might be able to put together a preliminary booklet that covers, many of those smaller departments. But we can certainly get the long-term projection of some of that other information.
I would say that it's going to be very tight schedule because we have this special town meeting. So,
Correct.
we're all trying to do like multiple things at the, in the
That's
same
precisely why
time.
we're proposing.
Right, and I
this.
actually had mentioned this to, and one of the other members of the Board of Selectmen, that we might have some time. So, I would say that the Finance Committee would prefer that the budget be as complete, that the Board of Selectmen's review of the budget be as complete as possible before it comes to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
So that that if we get a budget on February 17th that is pretty solid in terms of the Board of Selectmen review, and then there'll always be changes, like some changes, but that you're pretty solid and this is really what you're recommending. I think that would be more helpful than trying to rush it and get it to us on the first
Excellent.
and then say, well, we got to change, we're not ready. And I think it would be better for you to get your discussion, get your budget set, and then give it to the Finance Committee, and then we'll schedule according to that, starting with the
Excellent. Thank you.
17th. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, in that forward discussion, I've met with all departments with the exception of the Upper Cape Tech School. And I guess I'm glad I'm given a little more time now so I can get that done, because I don't know if the Upper Cape Tech has a separate finance subcommittee that reports back to the Upper Cape Tech Board, or are we better off sitting with the superintendent and going through that final number?
Much better sitting with the superintendent.
Okay.
Good call.
He has all final numbers.
Okay. So I'll be working on getting that done in the next week.
Good, very good. I'll send out a tickler just to make sure we're all copacetic. Thank you very much, Mary Jane. Okay. Brings us up to Selectmen's reports. Well, Mr. Meyer, anything tonight?
Just on a fun note, last Friday night I attended a Bourne High basketball game. Our men's basketball team is 9-2. They lost to an undefeated Upper Cape, Over Rochester regional team, and both their rosters out of ORR. But just to take pride in supporting our school athletics. I've always been a big fan of it, and I think it's something that we all should do if time allows, because there's really a lot of school spirit, and these kids do try their hearts out to do what's the best for and representing our town. Other than that, we did meet with the departments last week, and I think I may, through you, is maybe meet with some of these department heads again, if allowed, to get some clarification and to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Picard?
Well, the only thing that I did town-related, I think, was go to the Mass Municipal Association Conference and Trade Show. And what I got out of it was the regional dispatch is probably not a good thing. It's subsidized by grants and everything else, and I think at some point, if we got at the position where we had to do it ourselves, we'd probably be a lot better off. We did get to meet with a number of people, got some ideas on some things, got to speak to the comptroller for the town of Arlington, who used to be in the town that I worked in up at the North Shore, so I got some good, valuable information from him. And I got the good information on, I keep saying on, but from. And met some interesting folks who had some good, positive ideas about how we can move along.
Very good, thank you. I went with him.
Yeah.
I was his driver.
Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I can't report that I did a whole lot last week because I was under the weather, but what I can report is when I was able to feel well enough to get on out to shovel my driveway, that I found the roads of Bourne were phenomenally well kept, and I would have to say that the Bourne Department of Public Works did a phenomenal job of keeping our roads clean, as free as they possibly could be. Vis-a-vis other towns, we always heard kudos that our towns were far more well-kept than our municipal competitors on either side. So I'd like to just extend a great round of thanks to George Sala, Jonathan Nelson, the folks over the staff that kept our roads so well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jerry, anything this evening?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to echo what my compatriot here said.
Michael?
Yes, thank you, Michael. And touche. The DPW did an outstanding job. I have an in with the town that's further to the east of us, and I have to say that our roads were so superior to what happened in Sandwich that it's incredible. So everything was done at an appropriate time. The sidewalks in my village have all been done, and I would like to extend a great appreciation to the DPW and all the people that worked hard to do that. They're to be congratulated, and that we're lucky in the town of Bourne. We've got a group that works like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I'd just take a moment to elaborate a little bit on the MMA meeting. We as Dawn had mentioned, we attended a presentation by a fire department and a town manager relative to regional dispatch, and it was two towns which were not next to each other, and they had originally had a third town involved. It was the city of Lowell, and Lowell backed out at the last minute. So they had these two towns which are now working dispatch totally electronically between each other, and they've indicated that it worked out well. It's an interesting concept where you might have the town of Bourne and the town of Mashpee, or the town of Falmouth, or not the town of, straight that, the Barnstable working out with each other, for instance. However, when they started getting into the financial presentation of how this was done, as Dawn had indicated, a lot of the money was brought in to pay for new upgrades of equipment and facilities through grants. One of the towns admitted that they were saving an estimated someplace around, it was pretty soft, but $150,000 to $180,000. The other one admitted the fact that it was actually costing them a little bit more money, but they had a better system that was more secure and more robust. Our takeaway from it, after looking at the information that was passed out to the attendees, was that if it hadn't been for the grants, I don't think any of these people would be doing any kind of regional dispatch at all, because the grants were really underwriting most of the exceptional cost to put in the infrastructure needed to do the regional. I also attended the Wastewater Advisory Committee last week. There was an overview of the grant that was just received by the Buzzards Bay Coalition. As a reminder, this was a $200,000 grant to look at the addressing wastewater needs for Buzzards Bay, southern Plymouth, and getting into Wareham. And they're going after a supplemental grant to now include Marion, because Marion has approached this group and said that they would like to participate as well. What this would do is tie together Wareham's plant, which is capable of a great deal more treatment capability than it's presently doing, more than twice what it's undertaking at this time. It would combine that with actually we would eliminate Mass Maritime's treatment plant, take over that operation, and then extend seweraging up into both around Buttermilk Bay and into Plymouth. The initial kickoff would be, as you know, the 100,000 gallon per day treatment plant, which we put in the vicinity of Queen Soul Park to attend the immediate needs, and then the rest of this process would be brought on over the next 10 years. But it was an excellent overview, and I've asked them to put together a little bit more information to come back to us and update us later on in the spring. We did receive, this is a little premature, but I'm going to mention it, we did receive a verbal notification from the group called Compassionate Care. These were the folks that were going to, or had proposed to put in a marijuana cultivation center at the old Grand Union location off of Clay Pond Road. They've indicated they may withdraw their application. We are waiting a written on that. There was a meeting scheduled for February 2nd, and we'll make sure that those who are interested are notified prior to that. And I was going to mention that I thought the DPW did a great job, but I've already been beaten to that. So with that, is there any other business that may legally come before the board this evening? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So move, oh, do you want to do it? Go ahead.
No, you do it.
No,
Let's not fight now.
no, you go ahead. I've been yielding you so you can get votes. Go ahead.
No, I'm all set.
I have a motion for Mr. Bland to adjourn. A second to that motion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Corinne.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone, and thank you very much.
Yeah, Steve, the